his bro, Scotty Mo. It's about time to lose your shit. Everybody spark a spliff for that legend Kevin Smith.
And there have been sharks that have been sighted that have been that size, and they've actually caught some that were 21 feet. So it was a credible animal we were making. Doing the initial studies of the great white shark, I went to the Steinhardt, and I borrowed this set of jaws, which was huge. It's about 18, 20-foot shark. We made our shark larger by another 5 or 6 feet, but we kept everything in proportion. The teeth, when I started doing the actual drawings, for the construction of the shark, we used everything in proper proportion.
Welcome to SModcast. I'm Kevin Smith. Okay, one of the most unheralded, unsung jobs in film production is the production designer, man. Without the production designer, you have no set. You have no look of the film. You have nothing to see other than an idea of a director and a screenwriter. Production designer is responsible for everything you see when you watch a movie. The director just traffics what the production designer gives them. My whole career, I've worked with a few different production designers. One I worked with for many years, Robert Holtzman, nickname was Rat Face, and he loved his nickname. He put it into the credits of every movie we did, with the exception of Jersey Girl, because the people who produced the movie said, this movie is going to be an awards movie. We can't have a name like Rat Face up in the credits. So for the first time ever in his career, Robert Holtzman put his name solely as Robert Holtzman, left Rat Face out of it. Rat Face's job as a production designer was to take that script of mine, turn it into something that we can shoot on, sets that we could shoot on, bring the world to life before we can roll a single frame of film. And on that movie, I worked with the great Vilmos Zsigmond. And Vilmos, like Laszlo Kovacs, the two of them had escaped from Hungary during the Hungarian Revolution with cameras under their arms and footage of the revolution, and both, ironically, wound up winning cinematography Oscars. Vilmos and Rat Face on Jersey Girl worked very closely, so much so that while we were making the movie, periodically, this was in Philadelphia, you would hear Vilmos Zsigmond yell out, "Rat Face, get me Rat Face, I need Rat Face." And everyone would go scrambling because Vilmos was fairly old at this point and whatnot, and he didn't want to make an old genius wait. So we'd go find Rat Face. Everyone would freeze and like, got to get Rat Face, find Rat Face. You'd find Rat Face, bring him to Vilmos on set, and Rat Face would say, "Yeah, Vilmos, what do you need?" Looking for, obviously a production designer question to respond to. But instead, Vilmos said, "Rat Face, get me coffee. You know how I like it." So the production designer doesn't always get, even on the set, the respect that they deserve, man. But today we're talking to a production designer who has all the respect in the world. The first production designer whose name I ever learned when I was a child, because this person imagined for me an image of that I take with me everywhere in life. Even when I see a real shark in footage from any number of documentaries, National Geographic specials, I always go, it's not a shark, because this man introduced me to a shark when I was a kid in the most influential movie perhaps I've ever seen in my life. At age 5, my parents take me to a drive-in movie theater to go see Jaws. It was the movie of the summer, the movie event of that entire year. As we all know, historically, it changed the movie business. Movies went from being platform released city by city to being released all at once nationwide, thanks to Jaws opening on 300 screens back in 1975. So the movie undeniably had such an impact on pop culture, such an impact on filmmaking, such an impact on the world in general. I speak to you as somebody who grew up in a shore town in New Jersey, in Highlands, with a beach, Sandy Hook. And I stopped going to the beach at age 5 because I saw what happens in the water thanks to Jaws and whatnot. Now, when we say Jaws, of course, the layman, if you're lucky, think of, Steven Spielberg. Sometimes literary folks go, Peter Benchley. These are the rock star names of the movies beside, obviously, Roy Scheider and Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss. But for me, a rock star name of Jaws throughout my entire childhood, and a guy who's been incredibly closely associated, not just with Jaws itself, but the entire Jaws franchise, which I celebrate. I'm a big Jaws fan from top to bottom and stuff, is a man who we get to speak to today on Sundance, on SModcast. My house is not ready for the honor of this man being just on the audio coming through the internets of my house, man. Obviously, with quarantine and whatnot, we're not in the same room, but he's here in California. I'm here in California, and through the miracle of the internets, we're going to talk to the first production designer whose name I ever learned in my entire life, and perhaps for me, the most important production designer in the world. Give it up for Joe Alves, everybody. How are you, sir?
I'm great.
You started in this business. We're going to get to Jaws, of course, man. You've got this amazing book that's coming out, or it's available right now, called Designing Jaws. Gorgeous.
Yeah, show you the cover of it.
Beautiful book. Fantastic. And for you, I would imagine this is a movie you can't get away from. Your whole life you've been talking about Jaws. How nice to celebrate it in your own hardcover. There have been many Jaws books over the years. Nice of you to have yours, I would imagine, at this point, because your journey with this movie is singularly different from everybody else's. We all got to enjoy it. Spielberg got to fret making it and whatnot. But you're the person without whom we don't get to see Amity Island. We don't even get to see the shark.
The interesting thing about the book, Dennis Prince wrote, is that there's not too many books that deal with production design. They deal with the director, the actors. And so this goes in the inside, not necessarily about me, but Bob Matty and the various people that built the shark. And so, it's not the making of the movie as much as preparing, to make the movie. Which
is something that nobody really ever gets to talk about. When they talk about Jaws, and they've been talking about it for 45 years now, there's a 45th anniversary limited edition Blu-ray that Universal's putting out, which has cutscenes that I never saw before, behind the scenes footage that was shot while the movie was being made. Universal always puts together a very lovely Jaws package for the Jaws fans. But in all those documentaries, it's always what happened once everyone gets to Martha's Vineyard and how things go wrong and whatnot. This book is more about before one even gets to Martha's Vineyard.
Before it was even a movie, before they had a deal with Universal, I was involved. I mean, there was no charge number or anything. It was just I was presented the galley sheets to make some drawings. Oh, but can I mention something about Vilmos Zsigmond?
Yeah.
Because I love the guy.
You've worked with him as well.
With Sugarland Express and Close Encounters.
That's right. Oh, my Lord, the Close Encounters. I forgot this. Right.
And he was offered Jaws, and he turned it down. Stephen went to him, he doesn't want to make a shark movie, Isn't that amazing?
That is nuts.
Not that Bill Butler didn't do a great job, but Vilmos was just an amazing guy.
And he had just been on Sugarland Express with both you and Steven Spielberg, correct?
Exactly.
So it would have made sense to keep the team together.
Exactly, to keep the team together.
And what's ironic about it, too, is if anybody that knows anything about Vilmos is, I don't know if it was the case back then in the 70s, but when I worked with him 30 years later, he was a lap swimmer. Every day he would go swimming. He did 100 laps. We had to put him in a hotel where they had an Olympic-sized pool. So maybe he was like, I don't want to deal with the water in that way.
I don't know. It was just, it was disappointing that he turned it down.
No doubt.
Because we started off not that great of a relationship because I was a television guy.
Right.
And it wasn't until midway through Sugarland that he needed something to cover this whole big parking lot for where the outdoor theater was. And I said, that's okay. I'll get you a huge silk. I'll do it. And then he said, oh, wow, you could do that? Okay. So then we became, and of course in Close Encounters, we were really close together, because we had 48 photo floods, and arcs. And so anyway, well, that's something else. We'll get back to Jaws thing.
Let's dive into the beginning of your career, man. Did I read correctly? Did you really work on Forbidden Planet? Is that how far back you go?
Yeah. I animated the id.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Briefly, I went. I came down. I was born in the Bay Area. Went to San Jose State for a year, and then I really wanted to do movies. So I came down and I went to a art school called Chenard's, which is now Cal Arts, and I was there for a year, and then I was looking for a summer job. I wanted to stay in LA. And this friend of mine, he said, oh, my wife's father works at Disney's. Maybe you can get a job. I said, well, I don't think I was just turned 19,
right.
And so I called her father, and he happened to be the guy that hired the people at Disney. So he said, bring your portfolio in. So I said, I don't think all right. So I brought it in. He said, you're too late for the training program, but I could put you into special effects right now. Okay, so I go in and in this room, and Marion, I said, what do I do? She said, you flip the pages and draw in between. I said, oh, that's cool. Well, after a series of, she was working for this guy, Carlisle, who's working for Josh Metter, who was the king animator. Did Fire and Bambi, Nightball. Anyway, long story short, she had to leave. Dwight was working for Josh. He had to go to the hospital. In 2 months, I'm assisting Josh Metter. I mean, normally it takes years to become assistant. And he's given me this, and we're on the wide papers, because it's CinemaScope kind of thing. And I'm drawing the id, and then I'm passing it out to trainees and stuff. And so that's beginning, and that I was 19. And then, the id.
What happened?
I still have some original drawings.
Do you really?
Yeah, I actually, Greg Nicotero was a collector. You know Greg?
Oh, of course. Greg gave me years ago. Greg gave me, which he got from you, a copy of the blueprints.
Yeah. For
the shark, and he gave me a copy, and I have them framed in my house.
I know. Well, he had a couple ids, and he gave me one. I just gave him back one. But no, we talked last week. In fact, he co-wrote the book. He wrote the introduction to this book. And so we've been out book signing. We don't do anything anymore.
Right.
Anyway, that's how it started, Kevin.
So from that point, like once you're working on Forbidden Planet, is that like, all right, I'm officially in the movie business? Like what was the next job?
Well, the thing is, I became an assistant animator, and one quick story about Disney before I leave, because I really want to get into live action, is I'm drawing a little cookie for one of the fairies in Sleeping Beauty.
You have art in Sleeping Beauty?
Yeah, that was all animated.
Really?
Yeah, the first one, it was animated Sleeping Beauty.
Holy, and you worked on it?
Yeah, and I'm drawing a cookie because we're doing the effects. And this guy reaches over and he says, no, the cookie should look like this. And it was Walt Disney. I mean, it was like, oh, okay, Walt, we all call him Walt. So that was what am I going to say?
Oh, my good Lord. If only Walt Disney knew one day you would create the most fearsome cinematic creature that ever existed.
It was, anyway, so then I really wanted to get into live action after a couple of years animating. But, then, Kevin, because I was looking at your career, your bio, and what was so different is it was all studio system, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, until the 70s. So you came in 5 or 6 different, MGM, Paramount, whatever. And I came in as a junior set designer, and you go work in the draft room. And then you're lucky you become a senior. Then if you make you graduate to an art director. And it was pretty much that way on every department.
You could only kind of work up through the system. Nobody could enter in at the top.
wasn't until the mid 70s, Spielberg, Lucas, guys like that sort of separated a little bit. Just a totally different thing, you know.
So wait, when you make the transition to live action, what are you working on at that point? What's the first like studio live action movie? You you go to the union, and they give you, you say, okay, it's available now. You could go get a job. And this Bob Kenosha hired me at a studio called Ziv. It was a television series with Outer Space with William Lundigan, and I drew that. And then my next job was MGM, working on Mutiny on the Bounty, drawing a boat. And then I was at Warner Brothers doing some things for My Fair Lady. I mean, and then my big thing came. I became a senior, and I'm working at Universal, and I do it Mad World. Oh, really?
That pretty steadily, for 6 months, and they kept me on that. And I built models, and Stanley Kramer, So it was, and that's how you just sort of developed until they made me assistant art director. As an assistant, I was very lucky. I looked at Frank Arrigo, and we worked on Change of Habit, which is Elvis Presley's last movie. And then the big one as an assistant was Torn Curtain, Alfred Hitchcock.
What was it like to work with Hitch?
Everybody, wore ties.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if you were an art director, assistant art director, if you weren't on the shooting, it was ties and sport coats. And he always wore a black suit with a black tie. And he would come in the morning, we'd go have coffee, there'd be coffees and donuts. And he would sit there and start telling jokes that were so unfunny. And you had to know when to laugh, because he was talking about, for example, on the fjord, it's so cold. And Mr. Newman, who's Paul Newman, had to eat his asparagus with gloves because everybody knows you eat, it was a gourmet thing. You eat asparagus with your hands, and it was so cold you had to eat it with a glove. And so we're supposed to laugh, Is that funny? Yeah. Anyway, that was Hitchcock.
Was it like intimidating? You're a young guy at that point. Is it intimidating to step onto a set or work for somebody of Hitchcock's caliber? People, of course, know you've worked on Jaws and like Spielberg. What's he like? But he was a kid when you worked with him. By the time you worked with Hitchcock, he had been Hitchcock for many years. Is it intimidating to work with a figure like that?
Yeah, it was. And there were three people. There was Hein Heckroff was a production manager for Germany because he was going to do the ballet thing. And Frank Arrigo was the art director. I was the assistant. So I dealt, in a chain. But they're both away. And Peggy, his assistant, calls me and said, Mr. Hitchcock wants to talk to you. Me? Yes. So I go up. You won't believe this, Kevin. And he used to be an art director,
Is that how he began? Really?
Yeah, he was an art director in England before he was director.
So he could speak your language.
Well, yeah, and he started to draw this thing, but the pencil never left the table. It just kept like a worm crawling. And he said, okay, now, Mr. Newman comes here, runs down the stairs. You build the stairs. Mr. Al Whitlock is going to do the math shot. Then Mr. Newman comes down and goes over to the registration desk and leaves. And I said, how about the reverse shot? How about the, no. You only built what he was going to shoot. We never built, believe me, half sets because that was Hitchcock.
So he knew going in, his plan was such that he didn't need 4 walls, or it sounds like even 3 in some cases.
No, Kevin, he was so prepared. It was boring for him to shoot. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we built half sets. I mean, it could be an incredible set, but it'd be, he didn't do a reverse. So he knew he wasn't going to do the reverse. And so why, I have built huge sets for directors that never shot them.
Right. Heartbreaking. I would
I'm
imagine
sure you didn't have that problem, but But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They want everything, and then they figure out what they're going to shoot.
Alan Rickman once told me, the actor, he was like, if you could ever see the Harry Potter sets, he's going, you would lose your mind because they are so insanely detailed. And then you go see the movie and there's one big wide shot and then they move on and you don't spend the time just looking at the production value. He said that was just built into it. It's insane. He says him and the actors would stand around and just take it all in. And
I had a thing for a second, and I'm not going to talk about the director because he was a nice enough guy, but I built this huge fort for Geronimo. And, Geronimo's coming in and there's the Death Valley and the Tetons back there or whatever. But then you turn this way and there's the huge set. I kept waiting. When's he going to reverse? When is he going to? We had the reenactors and, the major actors there.
Right.
And he never did a reverse.
Oh,
he
my
never.
Lord.
So, and you're thinking, so anyway.
You're like, all that money, all that time, all that effort, all that artistry. Just turn the camera, buddy, just once.
Yeah. And I kept, John Hagen was a cameraman, director of photography. I said, when's he gonna reverse? I don't know. Okay. Anyway,
the heartbreak of a production designer. How do you get the gig on Sugarland Express? Because it sounds like you'd been working a lot longer than Steven at that point.
Well, yeah, what happened, I met Steven on Night Gallery, Roger, and I did three different years.
So were you with him on the one with Joan Crawford that he did?
No, that was the pilot. I wasn't in that position yet. I was still starting, and we did the pilot, and then we did a couple episodes of a thing called The Psychiatrist. It was a television series. I think there were 6 episodes. So then when he used somebody, staff guy. And then he was looking for somebody for Sugarland, and the production manager said, what you need is a young Frank Arrigo. Frank Arrigo was my mentor. So Steven said, oh, yeah, I know Joe. Yeah, he'd be fine. So the studio didn't even think we needed an art director because it was all on the road. But It was amazing because we just found stuff on the road, to shoot and make it better. There were just things that would come up.
Let's talk about that real quick in terms of, for those who don't understand the job. When you said it's a road movie, so there probably wouldn't be much production design. For those who don't follow this closely in film, if you're on a set, obviously that's where Joe thrives. He has to build that world that you're going to shoot on.
Right.
If you go out into the real world, suddenly you're relying more on things as they naturally occur, or location. This building exists, we'll just use this building. And then you have to set deck it and things, but the job gets a little bit easier at that point. Go ahead.
No. Well, anyway, because on Sugarland, we didn't have a location guy,
at all.
No. And so I went out and scouted. I remember getting on a helicopter and looking in Texas, I wanted a road that went forever this way and a road that went forever that way. And then I built a huge sign, which is a lot of different roads. And so Stephen panned down that. So you find that kind of thing. You fly around. And we scouted from Sugarland we ended up in San Antonio, finding locations and modifying them. So it was, if I found a road, but the road didn't look good, I painted the damn road, because it wanted a nice, clean road. And it was interesting because Stephen was like his first feature. And Bill Gilmore was the production manager. And what we would do is we would ride, the three of us, while we had a driver. And Bill would say, well, this location is not good. It's too far away from our base. It would take an hour and a half to get, and you lose 3 hours a day. So you want to keep something close. So I remember one time I said, stop. And we drove down a hill, and I said, there's a road up here. I said, you could get all the line of cars here, and Goldie would be up here, and then they pull down and you shoot this. And then Bill would say, yeah, and we're only 35 minutes away. So we got back, and Steven said, this is sort of naive at the time. He says, gosh, I feel like I'm stealing from you guys, you know?
Yeah.
And he was young, you know? And I said, no, Steve, that's what I do is give you information. You take it or you leave it. And Bill said, yeah, we're here to support you. And I think as then Stephen realized he had a team. He wasn't off just making a movie by himself, which you probably experienced as you started. But you find a team and you could rely on them to go out and find something for you. And then you could look at it and say, oh, that works. Or maybe it doesn't work, you know, blah, blah, blah. So that's how we grew.
And at this point in Sugarland, this is like he had done Duel already, but this was a big deal for him. Like this was like this might put me on the map, so to speak, as a studio filmmaker.
Yeah, and you had Goldie, who was the sweetest thing in the world. I got to tell you, I don't know if you
never worked with her, but I've loved her my whole life.
She's just so sweet, and I thought he did really a good job, but the picture really never went crazy, you know.
And so much so that, like, was that a Universal show?
Yeah.
So based on that, like, while I guess is that while he's working on that or right after that is when somebody's like, hey, there's this Jaws book. When did it come into your guys' lives?
Well, okay, without going into a big detail, Zanuck and Brown were the producers, heavyweights. Sure, they, you know, the Sting, Butch Cassidy. David Brown's wife, Helen Gurley Brown, was the editor of Cosmopolitan. He was New York based, and Dick was LA based. She said to David, I just read a galley sheet of this book, first time writer called Jaws. She says, I think it would make a good movie. David called me and said, Joe, you know, if you have time, they don't have a charge number, so they couldn't pay me, you know.
Because it wasn't even real yet. It was, they hadn't even purchased the book, so to speak.
Exactly. So he said, could you, while you're doing, you know, whatever, go through the galleys and do maybe, 30 drawings, you know, 11 by 16. I could show, they're in the book. They're the charcoal ones, rough ones. And so I did about 30 of those. And I talked to the head of the art department. And I said, I'm doing a television movie, and there was a lot of location sets. So I'd go check them out in the morning. Everything's fine. I'd go back and I start drawing. Sure, you know. And as an art director, you're only supposed to do a limited amount of drawings. Then they're supposed to hire an illustrator. Well, there's no charge number. They couldn't hire anybody. I went to their head, and he said, Zanuck and Brown, just do it. You know. I mean, there were like these kind of drawings.
And where are you getting reference for sharks? Like nowadays, one would go to the internet, find it and stuff. This was when the book came out, sharks weren't really even part of the public consciousness yet. If you look at those early things, sometimes it looks like Moby Dick. It looks more like a whale. I didn't get into studying them until there was an okay to do it. And then I got with an ichthyologist from Steinhardt in San Francisco, Leonard Campagno, and I did a 4-foot model, clay model, and he came down with me and we detailed so the shark was like right on. Really? You know, there was no, I mean, I was working with a top ichthyologist and he was there playing with the clay. No, the nose is this, you know. So we got it like right on, you know, Kevin. And then I really started talking with Ron and Valerie Taylor, who did the Australians who shot the underwater film.
Really nice people, and they advised me a lot about the movement of the shark and stuff like that. So,
all right. So at this point,
so that was. I would go over talk to Stephen. I said, "Oh, Stephen, I'm doing this thing. They don't have a director yet, you know, blah, blah, blah." And we was talking, he was going to do a pirate movie or something. He said, yeah, Joe, if we do this, because we don't want to do it in a backlot lake, you know, with a phony background. We want to do a big shark, maybe 25 feet in the real ocean. I said, yeah, that's what we're going to do, right? I mean, so we're very enthusiastic, a little naive, because nobody ever done that before, you know. And so basically, they had a director in mind, but he kept calling it a whale. So I guess they decided, to go with Stephen, you know. And basically, so then he came aboard.
So technically, you were on Jaws even before Stephen was on Jaws.
Yeah, right.
Well, when I first hear the word Jaws, I just think of a period in my life when I was much younger than I am right now. And I think because I was younger, I was more courageous, or I was more stupid. I'm not sure which. So when I think of Jaws, I think about courage and stupidity. And I think of both of those things existing underwater.
So when he jumps on, you've already shown him, like, look at the stuff I'm drawing and whatnot. He's drawn into the idea of, like, this is a Moby Dick story, but with a shark.
Yeah, I kept showing him, the illustrations, but then Marshall Green, who was the head of production, who just happened to live on a boat, so he really liked this. But the studio didn't want to do this movie.
Is that right?
No, they didn't want to do a dumb shark movie. Maybe they're going to spend $4 million tops. So Marshall said, let's have a meeting. I remember exactly. It was October 3rd, because I kept a little piece from the lady at the desk. It said 10 o'clock meeting with Marshall Green's office, Monday, October 3rd, 1973. So they had all the department heads, the head of camera, head of editing, head of effects, and our art department, and Zanuck and Brown, and the young Spielberg was there. And so it was a big group in Marshall's office in the top of the Black Tower. And so I went through the spiel, and the shark does this, the shark does that, and everybody, and I kept showing the drawings. And then Marshall said, okay, and he pointed to the effects department and said, okay, guys, how about it? Can you make it? And because we had figured a 25-foot shark. They said, no, we can't make a shark. I mean, it's never been done. Nobody's ever made a shark and shot it in the real ocean. And no, he said it would take a year and a half. And they said, besides, we have a bigger, important movie like the Hindenburg.
I
saw
that movie in the theaters.
Yeah, and Marshall got really upset and slammed his. He said Jaws could be a bigger movie than the Hindenburg, and everybody in the room sort of laughed, because this was George C. Scott. There's going to be this. Who's going to make this little shark movie?
Right.
So basically, everybody left. I was collecting my drawings. I started to walk out, and Marshall called me back, and he said, "Can you get the shark made?" And I'm thinking, young, ambitious, right? Yeah, I'll try. Yeah, okay. So, all right, he said, but take it out of the studio. Don't do it on the studio. He said, which is everything was done in-house.
Right, back then.
An awful lot. Find an independent guy. And after much trial and errors, Joe Lombardi, who's the Godfather, he said, oh, Joe, it would take a year and a half to make it. It's never been done. But I got some other projects. I went to Disney. They said, yeah, they could make it, but they won't take it to the ocean. And then somebody says, there is this guy, Bob Matty, who did the giant squid in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Worked at Disney's for years. I met him. And he talked about how he could do it. And in the book, there's a little sketch of, he said, I'll be back in a couple of days. He came back with this wire thing. You pull this thing and it goes like that, pull it back and the mouth opens, close. I said, good, okay. So you could make it. And then we said, we need some people. We need a guy that knows the plastics, the new. So Roy Arbogast, we found him making breakaway bottles. And yeah, there's new elastomers and stuff, and blah, blah, blah. We found people that did the photography, the electronics, and all that. So we put it together of 6 guys. I called them the Magnificent Seven. We had 7 guys started.
Yeah.
So that's how it started.
How long did it take to build that shark? Everyone was like, it'll take a year or 2 years. How long?
Yeah, let me tell you, this is, okay, so that would be probably, by the time we got the team together, would be November, middle of November, towards the end, December of 73.
Mm-hmm.
The book came out February of 74.
Oh my God, you guys had a shark. You were working on the shark before the book streeted.
Well, the book, yeah, no. So we started working on it, and then February, the book came out, and the studio said, we're going to start shooting this movie in two months. And I said, we can't do it 2 months. And then Spielberg said, well, give us 3 months. So anyway, that was May. So that was like 5 months, not a year and a half.
Right.
And so Bob, God, he tries it. Then the water would get the electronics,
Right.
just ate it up. We tested things; it would not work. And then it got this thing about the shark doesn't work. So then I would go to Bob. I said, "We have 3 sharks, left to right, right to left, and the one on the platform with the big crane
with a gimbal with an arm that can lift it up."
Yeah. And that was on a big platform that we could sink. I mean, I'll tell you how that works in the location that I found. So I would go to Bob. I said, what do you think's working? He says, I think the left to right is working. And I go to Stephen and I say, I think the left to right. Now, while I was there, we needed storyboards. They didn't want to pay to have a storyboard artist come in. But Joe could do it. Just don't tell anybody.
Right.
I ended up doing they're all in the book, probably 200 storyboards. And I would go to Stephen left, right, and he'd say, okay, we'll do 183, A, B, and C tomorrow. So everybody would prepare. So I said, and if it doesn't work, it's a test, but if it works, you shoot it. And basically, that's the way it went, And only one comment I have to make, because I got the critics throwing me crazy on this. They said we didn't use the shark because it didn't work, and we used the barrels instead. Totally wrong. If you see there's barrels in the early sketches based on the book, the barrels were a Hitchcock kind of thing that Stephen wanted to do. You know what I mean, Kevin? The barrel comes, it goes down. Oh, criminy. If the barrel's there, what's there?
The shark. It tells the story more so than, it tells a better story than just showing the shark. It's terror. It's the implication.
Last shot, you see the boat, and then boom, they pop up, right?
Yeah. So
and
that was planned at that point. Like that's
it's all sketched. You see the storyboards. So the critics say, "Oh, it didn't work. Shark didn't work, so that's why they did that." Not at all. Believe me, every shot shark we planned that's in the book there, we got.
What was the for those that don't follow the story that closely, when they got the shark to Martha's Vineyard, because you guys built it where? Out here in California?
Yeah. Here's what happened in Sunland. Rowley Harper was a caterer service, and they had a big lot and a big warehouse. So we based there, and they started making the 3 sharks there. As they got him somewhat finished, they shipped him to Martha's Vineyard. Now, one thing about Martha's Vineyard, I scouted all that by myself in the winter, looking for beaches that were covered with snow. And I met Peter Benchley in New York. And I said, so Peter, where did you write this for? He said, well, there's Sag Harbor, Stubbleton, Menemsha, different, but nothing specific.
Right.
Except he said, Nantucket, my parents lived there. Nathaniel Benchley, and he said, go see them and go look at Nantucket. My wife will make you cucumber and cream cheese sandwiches. So basically, I left and I started scouting. Not only did I want, or we want, Stephen, and we wanted a quaint village kind of thing, but we also needed a location to shoot the shark. And there was a barge. And then it would sink, and we needed 25 feet of depth. So when it raised, it was, perfect height. But we needed also a small tide, In the West Coast, the tide's like 12, 14 feet. Mm-hmm. So I'm scouting all over, and I end up down in Woods Hole, and I take the boat to Nantucket, but it was such rough weather, they turned around. So then there's a boat to Martha's Vineyard. And I asked Peter about Martha. He said, no, there's nothing in Martha's Vineyard. But he'd never been there. He's an island guy, doesn't go to that.
Right.
So I took the boat to Martha's Vineyard. And I started scouting, and I saw, Vineyard Haven. I saw, the various towns, and they were perfect. Menempsea, and so Edgartown, but in between there was this bay with an open view of the ocean. It was 25 feet with a 2-foot tide.
So that's why you guys chose Martha's Vineyard. It was perfect for the barge. Edgartown was perfect, and
right. And Menempsea for Quint's place. So that's how that came about. And I brought Stephen there, and Zanuck was not too crazy about it for 2 reasons. The Menempsea, the thing, not Menempsea, the thing with Ted Kennedy.
Yeah, Chappaquiddick.
And a lot of rich people lived there.
Right.
And they didn't want a movie being shot.
Is that true? So the local community, did they welcome you guys, or they were like, ugh?
No, Stephen was smart. He hired all the selectmen and put them in a movie.
Right.
I took a painter and a carpenter, and that was my crew, and a set decorator. And I built Quit Shack. I built the boats. We did a boat, rebuilt a boat, all with locals. So they were really excited to get this work.
That's smart.
I mean, there's rich people, but there's people that aren't rich that live there that have, summer jobs and stuff like that. So it worked out. Yeah, we didn't really have any complaints, I mean, I almost hit Walter Cronkite's boat. Walter, many years later, some producer knew him. He came into a movie I was doing. It was a really nice guy. And he said, "Yeah, Joe, I know." He said, "We used to get out and sneak around and watch you guys shoot, but it didn't seem to bother him."
Right. How long were you guys originally, as most of the stories tell us, you were originally supposed to be there for a certain amount of time, and then the shoot just kept extending. Were you there the whole time in Martha's Vineyard?
Oh, I was always there. I was, my job became coordinating between Bob Matty and Stephen, because Bob was sort of hard to talk to. You ask him, is the shark going to work tomorrow? And he'd start telling you, well, the ram thing with the solenoid didn't, and the thing didn't go, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, but is it going to work tomorrow? Well, that depends on things. So Stephen said, just go talk to Bob.
Right.
Well, Bob.
You were the Bob whisperer, so to speak.
And then I'd go to Stephen. Okay. And then every time the shark was there, I would be on board, And, but what happened was we shot everything we could without the shark. Every walk and talk thing you could do. We did some barrels. We did whatever. Verna and Fields and I were doing something. And just
Verna Fields, for those that don't follow it closely enough, is the editor. That's Mother Cutter, right? So she's building the movie. Won the Academy Award. And she's building the movie while they're shooting the movie. For those that don't follow that closely, cutting a movie while you're shooting a movie ensures that you're going to find out, we might need this. We did miss this. Let's get this.
It's great. She had a big Kim.
Photo chem machine, yeah.
Yeah, and she had my storyboards there. I've never seen a director, editor do that. I mean, there was no ego about this thing, It was, we were working together. There were like 6 of us that really believed in the movie. The other people were crew, hardworking crew, but the production manager, Stephen, Verna, myself. And so I remember we had the Kim, and we had some tests, and we had Ron and Valerie Taylor on the phone, and Valerie was saying, "Joe, you're moving the tail too much. The shark is big. He just thunders through until he wants to attack something." So, I was getting expert opinion about how, and the first shot we got of the shark going by the boat, and you see how big it is.
Yeah.
And it just moved perfectly. We didn't go like this. And that was Ron and Valerie Taylor's advice, to do that.
And so for the sequence, like Ron and Valerie Taylor shot underwater footage of actual sharks with a smaller cage.
It's a team there.
With the team. Did you go for Australia, or they did that over there by themselves?
No, let me explain what happened there. Okay. we had Tom Wright was a really good illustrator. He was at the studio, so we're now in charge of it. So he did sketches of what was going to go there. He also did all the paintings for Night Gallery. He was great.
Wow.
Anyway, we sent a team. Frank, my sort of mentor, Arrigo, was the producer that went down with. But what Valerie told us is that the biggest shark we're going to get is 16 feet.
Mm-hmm. Which Jaws
And
in the movie is 25.
25.
Right.
So we found a stunt guy who was about 4'6", and I made a small cage, because this is what he goes up when Dreyfuss' character goes down the cage and the shark's going to hit him. So this guy said, "Oh yeah, he's a diver. He does all that." People say they whatever they could do.
Right, anything to get the job.
Yeah, there's a whole bicycle sequence, but they don't know how to ride a bike.
Right.
I had that on Jaws too. The kid didn't know how to swim. Swim is a sequence, and he doesn't know how to swim until we get there. Right?
On the day.
I'm sure you've had this kind of thing.
Yes.
Anyway, so I had to make a small tank.
Right.
Everything scaled down. So they got there. They had a full-size breakaway cage on the side of the boat, but then they set the small one down. He gets in there, and the 16-foot shark comes, and he freaks out. He sucks all the air out. They have to pull him out, and he goes and hides and says he's not going back again.
Are you kidding me? Really?
Really. But the crew is under there shooting, and while that is happening, the real shark goes after the cage that's just, and it gets caught in the cage.
That's in the movie.
But there's no Dreyfuss. So everybody says, because Dreyfuss is supposed to get eaten.
Right.
In the book. So they said, no, we got to use that. That's this great shot. And I know I could never get any shots of the shark going away because we'd have all the mechanisms seen, so we needed a couple, not too many, but a couple of real shark.
Right.
Anyway, everybody goes, that's so great. So anyway, what happens is the shark attacks, the Dreyfuss character goes down and hides.
Right.
And he lives.
So basically that footage that Ron and Valerie shot changed the subject, changed the script.
Yeah.
That's wild, man. That's right. Cause Hooper dies in the book.
Yeah. But isn't it great when they come up together and then there's some, yeah.
All right. So all throughout the production of the flick, it was trial and error because nobody had ever done anything like this before. You reached out to Bob because he had done the octopus in 20,000 Leagues, but nobody had. How did they represent sharks in movies prior to Jaws?
Because they didn't do much animation. A lot of stock footage, I guess.
Right. So the one that they built, that you guys build, all three of them, are made of what kind of? Is it foam or is it?
Well, no. Okay. First of all, if you look, there is a thing here. It was really a technical thing. I think I would just You see that?
Yes. Oh my God. I see that in my dreams. That's what heaven looks like. I love that picture.
So you see all the inner work?
Yes.
And that's the one on the crane thing. And then, so it has a full structure. And then there's layers of foam that doesn't absorb water. And there's different elastomers and stuff. And then we painted it with a number 40 silica sand so it wouldn't, go off like that. Mm. And this is the framework to start with to make the mold. And anyway, it was a big deal. So,
and nobody had ever built a monster that big, right?
Well, Disney built some stuff. Disney had built. They have built stuff, but they shot it in a tank,
right? So
sharks have been made, and whales. There was a whale, killer whale, I think. Disney had done something like that,
right?
But not in the real ocean.
And so going into it, this is all trial and error. It's all theoretical until you get the actual unit to the ocean. Like, did they test them in a pool before they went to Martha's Vineyard? No.
We didn't have time.
Wow.
We had no time to test. There was no testing. In other words, we started shooting. We started in May. By mid-June, okay, that gives Bob maybe 6-7 months, not a year and a half.
Yeah.
So we started shooting whatever was available to shoot, and it kept rehearsing. The other problem we had, Kevin, is when I scouted that bay, it was in December. Come July, September, or August, Hyannisport is there, and all the big boats are coming.
Oh.
And Stephen was, to his Stephen was so firm that he wanted to see nothing out there. These guys were alone. That's why they broke the radio.
Right.
Quint broke the radio. And so we were there, and the studio would go crazy because why isn't the kid shooting? Because there's boats out there. We'd send runners out. Could you move the boat? And some people would cooperate. Then there would be asses, say,
Right.
no. Okay. So he, whenever we did a master shot, he wanted nothing out there. And I got to tell you, he was strong-willed. It's amazing, because of the pressure. Not like doing some independent thing. You got a major studio there. And so...
And it's something that today would they digitally erase any boats on the horizon.
Oh, absolutely. Today it's digitally erased. So on the second Jaws movie, I was doing Close Encounters, and I would go out to Pensacola with this girl that had greyhound dogs and run on a Sunday, and there was just this huge bay with ocean and nobody on it. And I said, God, if we ever do a Jaws 2, this is where we're going to shoot the ocean. Well, I got back and they started Jaws 2, so we did establishing shots in Martha's Vineyard, and then we went to Navarre Beach, Florida.
That was a cleaner view of the horizon and stuff.
Yeah, and then we had a shark we had worked, so. But then on that one, the studio wanted shark after shark after. I directed 85 days a second unit of shark stuff. It was killer.
They wanted as much shark as possible in the.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, you realize that what Stephen went through. You sitting on a boat for hours, waiting to get the shot.
Right.
I mean, it drives you crazy. Is this working? No, we got a camera's not thing, blah blah blah, and you're sitting there, right? I mean, and you're waiting.
And
yeah.
it's not, and you literally can't do anything about it. Like if an actor is late, you can go to their trailer and be like, get over there. If some other craftsperson on set is like dropping the ball, you could yell at them, replace them, but you cannot do anything about the real world.
No, you're out there in the ocean, and of course, you shoot this side of the boat. The water looks one way. You shoot that side, it looks the other way. It's hard to, Verna was going crazy.
Yeah, how does one match in cutting? Oh my God, what a nightmare! So while this is going on, and everybody's, like I would imagine at a certain point start fretting for their jobs and whatnot. What is the mood like on set, particularly for the Magnificent Seven or the core group of people that believed?
Of course, the effects guys worked 7 days a week, 24. I mean, they were working 12, 13 hours. They never had a day off. So, I mean, their focus was to get that done. The crew was getting buggy, they just wanted to get away. Mm-hmm. And when we got back to the studio, we were not heroes. We were over budget, over schedule. This shark movie was going to kill us, and we weren't going to have a career.
It's so crazy, man. You guys aren't the Hindenburg, so it's going to be, it's going to ruin your careers. Was there was it a minute before you got your next gig, or was Stephen like, we're going to go on and do this thing?
No, because after Jaws, then Stephen had this idea of doing this movie. We went skiing, and we were up in a condo. A friend of mine, Dick's mother, had a condo, and we were talking about being alone. Then you start talking about Dr. Hynek's book, a UFO Scientific Inquiry, with a person counter the first kind, second kind, third kind. I said, oh, wow, that sounds more interesting. That sounds like a great thing. So he didn't do Being Alone. John Badham called me a week or two later and said, oh, I'm doing Being Alone. I said, oh, I guess Stephen's not. But I did a thing called Embryo with Rock Hudson, small movie. Mm-hmm. Didn't go in place. And then Sugarland. I mean, then Close Encounters.
Close Encounters.
And I was the only person I went scouted that by myself,
And wait, so did you go find Devil's Tower?
Oh, yeah.
That was you?
I drove 3,000 miles looking. I got a big map of scenic USA, and I drove to Shiprock, Chimney Rock, Arches, all these. I went to, the president's, the backside of that, South Dakota. And then I ended up to this thing I couldn't believe, the Devil's Tower. So
looks like it must have looked like a movie poster when you saw it, like, because that's what it became.
Well, it was interesting because as you drive, you see this little shape, and then you just disappears. And then the next time you come up, then it's bigger, and then it disappears. And then you come up, and my God! And so at that time, you had 35 millimeter film. And I took pan shots, and then I got back home and I put them on the illustration boards, all the various. And then Stephen looked at it and he says, "There's no question."
Was that so? It was in the material, the script, the book, or whatever, like this a mountain structure or something.
Yeah, it's just a strange mountain.
Strange mountain. Oh my God!
Yeah, because the head of
found a better strange mountain than that.
The head of production at Columbia said, "Joe, we're going to shoot everything on the back lot and on the studio, but we need some location, one location, a weird mountain. So go off." And there was nobody working on the movie yet.
Right.
Same damn thing. So I'm out driving by myself for 3,000 miles looking for a mountain.
Do you know how amazing that is? Like, think about what for you was the beginning of a job where you're like, I have to go out and location scout this. And then you find something that has captured people's imaginations for, 40 years since Close Encounters? And that goes the same with the shark. Like, you imagined for people this incredible vision that they have taken with them forever. And just the sight of Devil's Tower fills one with a sense of like, oh my God, a happy childhood. I remember seeing that movie. I remember how breakthrough that was.
Shape was so perfect, wasn't it?
So wait, did you duplicate the top of the mountain?
No. The only thing I duplicated, this is, today there'll be all green screen.
Right.
When Dreyfuss and Melinda Dillon climb up the thing, I built a 7-story section of the mountain on rollers so we could shoot in front of a 125-foot front projection screen.
Oh, my God.
And so they climbed up that, and then Doug Trumbull was doing the effects, and then he photographed the big set, so when they climb up and you see the big set, so he shot that in 65, so we wouldn't lose a definition, back to 35. So, I built that thing on rollers. So, it was a huge 7 stories on rollers. So we could, and today you could Google, you do green screen and finding the location would be Googled. And, you just say, give me mountains, weird mountains, and you Google it, right?
True. But back in the day, had to be somebody out there going to find it and then bringing that idea back to the director. It's so like, and it'd be illustrative for those listening, like, with all due respect, like, I'm a director. So with all due respect to directors, you can see how the most important key elements of a movie don't even sometimes start with the director. Starts with the director turning to somebody like Joe going, what do you think? What would that look like? Can you draw that for me? Can you go find this for me? And then it becomes part of the fabric of the storytelling.
It's interesting. I quoted it because I had an occasion to do a little speech recently. I was talking about Rod Serling. I was talking to Rod. We were sitting there, Janosch work, and was in between after a segment we shot. And I said, Rod, how do you do that? You wrote all those Twilight Zones, you read all the Night Galleries. He looked at me, he said, Joe, I write the words, but you make them happen. And I thought about that. We do take the words, right? Nothing, without a script, we got nothing. But you take that and it says, a mountain. Okay, well, it means nothing until you go find it and execute it, And but I was blown away. A young guy, and Rod Serling's telling me that I write the words, but you make it happen.
He may be an older guy, but he's a smarter guy. He knew what he was talking about.
Well, we had a number of different shark components. We had the full shark. which I call the Great White Turd, which kind of, we pulled along in the water, and it was often on this huge gantry, like a crane arm. And the crane arm was tucked all the way at the 30-foot bottom. You couldn't see the shark. When the crane arm, as quickly as they could blow the ballast and force the arm out of the water, the shark would rise out of the water. The shark could be gimbaled separately on the arm to have an attitude change at the top of the crane arm. We had that. We had just a fin that was pulled through the water. And we had a left to right shark and a right to left shark. And the left to right shark, of course, had no left side. It was all scooped out. And vice versa for the other shark.
So wait, so let me ask you this. So many of us, our childhood's ruined by Jaws. And as much as like, I won't go near the water and stuff. How do you, did you ever have shark nightmares? How deep did the shark embed into your psyche back in the day? Because of course your relationship goes beyond just Jaws, goes to Jaws 2 and Jaws 3 as well. So for a while you were synonymous with sharks. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it became, because it was a physical thing of getting it made, how we're going to shoot it, where location. I mean, I had a lot of problems when I directed Anna Landsberg was cheap.
Right.
And let me ask you this. Have you ever done a movie where you didn't have final cut?
Oh, no.
And you make a movie that's 2 hours and they cut it by 25 minutes.
Ugh, tough. That is tough. But I'm here to tell you as a fan, I paid cash money to see Jaws 3 in a theater, and I was not unhappy. I love Jaws 3. It was still a part of the world. Jaws is one of the only film series before the Marvel movies where there's a continuity and a world and characters carried over, so much so that in 3, you're still dealing with Brody kids. And even in 4, they were dealing with Brody kids. So I love that stuff in a big, bad way. But I can understand.
Have you ever done 3D?
Never.
Oh, God, it drives you crazy, with the focus.
No doubt, man. But still, that to me is really good. And it's such a good idea too. The idea of like the shark in the park that gets flooded and everybody kind of trapped. It was a really cool idea. So so were you ever scared of sharks? Are you worried one day you're going to be eaten by a shark for all the sharks that you brought? I
was doing something out in the ocean, floating around, and it made me think about that. Oh my God, there's sharks here. And so I just walked back to shore. But that was basically it. There are shark attacks. There's no question about that. White shark, they generally don't go after people. They will if you're on a surfboard. They think it's a seal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they like seals better than people.
When Jaws 2 happened, now you guys are making Jaws and the studio's like, oh, this movie, it's going to kill us. And then of course it becomes Jaws. How quickly did they then say, do it again? Because again, this is at a time when sequels weren't de rigueur. It wasn't the standard.
What happened was I was finishing Close Encounters. I came back to the studio because Close Encounters was Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
But I went and they contacted me, Zanuck Brown, and said, we're doing Jaws 2, and John Hancock is the director, and they're rewriting it and blah, blah, blah. So Stephen wanted me to do something else. What was he doing at that time? And I had the choice of going with Stephen. And I said, Zanuck said, well, we'll let you do all the second unit. Because I did do some second unit on Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
I did a little shot with the shark getting the kid on the raft.
Oh my God, that shot you see the outline of him underwater, and then you guys cut away just before
I did the thing where the kids float onto the raft and the shark up and grabs it.
Beautiful
and
shot.
Stephen he really wanted to get back. It was exhausting. And he said, just this, could you go get that? So I did. It was kids playing. Anyway, so Zanuck said, we'll make you second unit director, make you a producer, associate producer, and production designer. So I went to Stephen and he said, I'll give you the same thing. I said, well, good, I'll go with you because we're buddies. But he said, I don't have a deal.
Right.
yet. Hollywood, without a deal, it's nothing until you have a deal.
That's true. It's only an idea in somebody's head until there's some paperwork.
And, and Dick and David were, Joe, you got to do this for us, blah, blah, blah.
And it's also, you are the key component at that point. Like for many, of course, Jaws does not happen with Steven Spielberg, but if you trace it all the way back, like, you are the shark guy, in order to make a successful Jaws movie, they have to turn to people who are involved in the first one and be like, you did it, do it again. So it makes sense that they reach out to you.
Yeah, put the team together. And then, of course, they had a problem with Hancock. And
he left for, what was the guy's name who replaced him?
Jeannot Schwartz, I got him the job in this respect that he did 23 episodes of Night Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
So we were very close. And we had a lot of young directors, John Badham and you have no preparation when you're doing a 3-day shoot. You have, so it's pretty much, here's the sets, this. So, with most directors, they say, okay, fine. With Jeannot, he seemed to find a better way of doing it than I had planned,
Right.
Oh, this guy's pretty clever, He shot so I thought they needed a director. I said, went to Verna Fields. She's now vice president. I said, I got this guy, Jeannot, and he did a movie called Bug or something. So anyway, they were going to shut it down. They're going to just cancel it out. And Ned Tannen was the president then. Ned Tannen called me and he said, so we're going to shut it down. I said, well, I want to talk about directing. He said, oh, are you and Verna want to direct it? And I said, well, that's not a bad idea. But the Directors Guild wouldn't let us do that. You can't fire somebody. And then, like they could take a cameraman, fire the director, and he could take over. That was a no-no.
That's such a shame because of anyone involved with the production,
Verna and I would have.
You were tempered in steel. You were there for the making of the first one. It makes
and she would know what we needed to cut. We would, it would have been perfect. Anyway, so I mentioned Jeannot, so then he came by, and then we changed the location to Florida, and I think Bill Gilmore went and shot some third unit with Scheider and Lorraine driving around.
Is that right? So they shot Jaws 2 down in Florida?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we made things look like the East Coast.
Right.
Locations. And, but we shot so much footage. I mean, so much shark stuff. I'd sit on the boat hours. Maybe I'd get, all day and get maybe 2 shots,
Grueling. I'm a dialogue man. So if we're not shooting dialogue, I feel like we've lost our way and lost time. And on a movie like that, dialogue is secondary. You're trying to get the beautiful shots.
I got a shot where the shark eats the helicopter.
Yeah, I love that shot.
I said, oh, that's in the script. I mean, we had Carl Gottlieb on 1, 2, and 3. We brought Carl back. I love Carl. We're good friends. Anyway, so I thought, God, shark and helicopter. But then I saw this little helicopter with the pontoons, and I said, boy, the shark could go after that. It looked like 2 seals up there. So, Kevin, we get there, and you have to anchor the helicopter. You have to anchor the effects barge. You have to anchor the camera barge, right?
And so is Cable Junction real, or do you have to build that in the water? Like the island that
I built all that.
So that's not even a real island.
No, I built that island.
Oh my God. So none of it's real. You went out in the ocean, built it all.
No, it was all, we just had a big bay out there. So anyway, I'm doing that shot. And so I said, okay, fine. It's a 7 for 8. You get out there by 11, you got everything anchored. You're ready to go. And the shark goes and it turns and it hits the camera boat, and that's it.
He's done for the day. Oh my God.
Okay, second day. All right, get the helicopter going, get the shark going. The helicopter flips over and breaks all the things. That's
in the water?
Yeah, so we have to, that's a cut, put new blades on there. Third day, finally, thing is spinning. The shark gets it, takes it down. It was a perfect shot. But 3 days, you go crazy
to get that shot.
Yeah.
What is the when we think of the modern day blockbuster, it traces all the way back to Jaws, the first event film, as they say, something that, an instant summer movie and whatnot. What does it feel like to play such an integral part in that legacy? Like, it's not just like, oh, I drew a shark once. Like, you created Jaws, for heaven's sakes.
Well, Kevin, the industry is very unforgiving.
Yes.
I never, first of all, we thought they were going to laugh at the shark because it would make funny noises and the crew would laugh after we cut. And then we had the screening and they didn't laugh. They screamed. I think they opened, all the executives there, Lou Wasserman, and I think they opened at 450 theaters is what I recall, which was huge opening then. So it became a big success. But that didn't mean that much to me at the time. Yeah, it was a big success, but what's the next job?
Right.
The next job is very important. And it goes on that way, your career. So then I did Jaws 2. God, no more Jaws movies. And then I was doing a thing called the Ninja director. I can't remember. And I was on that for 7 months and that got canceled.
Oh, my God. So to put in that much time and then not have there be a product.
I've got a history of that, of movies that, and then Verna said, there's this guy, the television guy that bought Jaws 3 and blah, blah, blah. So then I got involved with that. But, it was like, then after 3, when I was directing, I was trying to get directing gigs. Mm-hmm. And you know how that goes. I had one gig I was on it for 7 months and then the money fell out. And another one, I scouted all over Europe. And that got back. I was going to do a racing movie and a Grand Prix thing. And I got back and the company folded, somebody else bought them. And so anyway, I didn't think about Jaws until probably this century. Right. When I went to a reunion,
right?
Greg Terrell kept calling me, and I gave him a lot of, and people said, "Oh, you should sell your storyboards, copies of your story." So I do at joelsmovieart.com, so all that stuff.
Beautiful.
And so all those years, I never really thought about it until this century, when there's these fan-based things. I started doing these shows. Mm. You did Comic-Con and stuff, and I did. Yeah. In New Jersey.
That's the thing that was missing when you guys made the movie was fandom, because that's what you guys created was fandom. You created an army of people that love the movie so much they can quote it backwards and forwards. They want to see where it was shot and whatnot. So you watched over the course of your career, your position go from unsung to like you can walk into like a Jaws Fest or a Comic-Con and people are like, you're a rock star.
But look you're born in 70, so you're like
49, going to be 50 soon.
Going to be 50. Greg Nicotero's 56. Mm-hmm. Dennis Prince, who wrote the book, is 55. So suddenly these guys, that age, are successful.
Yeah.
And then they look at it, oh, wow, what a great thing you did. And I'm thinking, I've been retired, for 20 years. I mean, I'm very busy. I do a lot of sculptures and I'm very happy.
Right.
But it was like, and the guy that wrote this book is a big Jaws fan. And he said, I wrote to you back in the 80s and you drew a shark for me and blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
so it was, it's interesting, but it's you guys that are making it.
Yeah, but it's basically, it's akin to what Serling said or told you years ago. It's like you guys dreamed it. Like we consumed it, and that bred a generation of storytellers who were like, I want to do that. And none of us will ever make Jaws, but some get close. Like with Greg, he does his prosthetics, and then he became a director as well. And if there's anybody in this world loves Jaws, is Greg. I mean, you've seen like his the back of the orca and stuff like that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, and you look at, he did the forward he writes about on the book. He's a great guy, and he's so busy now. Well, he lives close by, and he's doing Creep Show. He's writing Creep Show.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. The orcas. Let's talk about the orcas real quick. You said there were what, 2 or 3 orcas?
2.
The story I've always heard was that the one at Universal, the tour, was one of the boats. Is that true?
Yeah. Here's how smart the studio is. When we got back from the studio, from Jaws, they threw the sharks in the back lot, let them rot.
Oh my God.
They sold the boat, the Orca. They sold it for like almost nothing because somebody wanted it, some grip, and they sold it. And then Jaws became a big success, and they wanted to make a shark. They made the out of the original mold. I'll get to that real quick. Anyway, so then they had to buy the Orca back. But that boat, we bought the boat. Tom Joyner and Bob Manning and I found it in near Massachusetts somewhere. I can't remember. And then I totally changed it. Stephen wanted bigger windows, and I made it a real character.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to give it sort of a quaint look to it. Painted it dark, and so it had a lot of character. So then Bob Matty needed a boat to sink, so we made a fiberglass of the same boat, mm-hmm. and with no bottom. And then he had all these barrels. So he could turn the barrels, it would float, but you turn the barrels, it would suck the water, so then the boat could angle different degrees.
Right.
And so then that one got broken up and destroyed. The other thing I built was I built some of the windows when the shark comes into the cabin. Mm-hmm. That was, it was, and then, so the studio, they had nothing. So then they made a fiberglass shark out of the original mold, and they hung it up for years.
Which I took pictures with as a kid.
Yeah, there's a picture. Greg has a picture. And then somebody got it, and it was at a car lot. It was not a used car part lot. It's called the Junkyard Shark, right?
Right.
And then if you see in the back of the book, it was restored. Greg Nicotero restored it. I was approached by somebody from NPR about 10 years ago, Corey Turner, and he wanted to do some, what's happened to the shark. And so we went and looked at it. It was just not too well, they had wood teeth on it. And I got Roy Abergasse, and he says, yeah, this is made from the original mold. I could tell, the flaws and everything. So then a couple of years after that, somebody called me from the museum, Motion Picture Museum, which they're working on. And she said, we're going to buy it. And can we get somebody to fix it up? So then I called Greg and Roy. We went and looked at it. He says, yeah, I could do it. So he's been working on it. So now, then I went to the museum to see where it should hang it. And it's in the book there. It's perfect, So that's the lasting shark.
That's the one that made it.
Yeah.
The orca story that I'd heard about the boat on the lot was on the on the tram tour when you come to Amity Island. The orca, they had an orca that was there for years.
Yes.
And apparently that was the one. And they said that since Amblin was there on the lot, Spielberg periodically would go sit on the boat because it was the boat that changed his life. Like he spent, formative time on that boat, worried about whether his career would work or not. And of course, the boat made all the difference in his career. Then they said some Universal executive at one point had gotten rid of the boat. Did you ever hear this story?
Yeah. He said, what do we do with that old boat? So they just broke it all up.
That's what I heard. They destroyed it.
Spielberg really flipped out about that.
Rightfully so. Like not only his personal piece of history, but like a piece of film history. It's the orca, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah. I mean, executive probably had no relationship with the movie or cared. Or, I don't know. let's clean up the back lot.
Right. The you said you've been retired for like 20 years now from the motion picture business, but now people have loved Jaws forever, but now we live in the age of fandom, as you pointed out. Like, you're interacting more with Jaws in this century than you did in the last century.
Oh, because of the book.
Yeah.
And Dennis, we first did a book on Close Encounters because Catalina Island, I got to know the lady who runs the museum there, and she had a thing about Close Encounters. So we just self-published book, Close Encounters. And but we had a lot of problems with Sony on that. I had the Wyoming Park Commission flew me up to Devil's Tower, really nice lady, and they wanted to shoot a film of me finding the tower. And then they had me 40 years before, and then finding the tower and talking. And so, and then I had pictures of me and Vilmos and Stephen. And so they did a documentary on that. But Sony said, "Oh, you can't use this picture and that." I said, "That's my private pictures."
Yeah, it's my life.
They were really asses about it.
Yeah.
So we self-published it, and it never really, we didn't make a lot of money off of it. But what was funny is when we were shooting Close Encounters, and I put a sign, "Park closed," because then Dreyfuss runs through there and climbs up the hill. And the ranger said, "You can't close the park." I'm not closing the park. It's just park closed, and then we'll take it off. No, you can't close the park. He was insistent. So we couldn't put that sign. And then 40 years later, now it's a big thing. Come to, Devil's Tower, because that's where they shot Close Encounters.
No doubt. You put them on the map, for heaven's sakes. You are largely responsible for why a lot of us grew up to do what we did, to work in this business. You dreamed our dreams for us, man. You showed us our nightmares, but you captured our imagination. And whether it was in Jaws, with a shark flying onto a boat, or whether it's in Jaws 2 with a shark eating the pontoon on a helicopter, or whether it's in Jaws 3 where the shark goes right into the facility and whatnot. Those are all happy childhood memories for me, man. Up above my head, if I tilt this screen up, you'll see way on the top shelf up there. There he is.
Oh, I see it. I know that shark.
Oh, come on. That's the beautiful sideshow, I think.
That's what I got a lot of shark pictures here. I don't know if you can see them. But
oh, yeah. I mean, you.
And there's pictures of Spielberg and different crew. Oh, yeah. This is Carl and Dreyfuss. And we did a show somewhere.
It is.
Anyway.
It looks like an office that I would like to live in, sir. It's got so many cool memories on it. The book, of course, is called Designing Jaws. It's available right now. You can pick it up on Amazon. Jaws celebrating its 45th anniversary with a fat Blu-ray with a lenticular cover that's out right now. Pick it up and whatnot. It's ridiculous to say I just watched Jaws recently. I watch Jaws at least 6 times a year. So I just watched the new version of it when it came, and it absolutely to say it holds up is an understatement. It's still the gold standard to which many movies aspire to, and all movies steal from to this day.
I just want to say one thing.
Please do.
Last year or 2 years ago, Catalina had in their museum 6 months of Jaws. Greg brought a lot of his drawings. I had originals. People say, "Oh, you can't put the originals out that cost," but I saved all the original storybook. Anyway, so then they had a big screen outdoor at night, and they had the audience there. And I wasn't going to sit down. My wife said, "Yeah, sit. You're going to watch the movie." I said, "I haven't seen it for a long time, but I hadn't seen it on the big screen."
Right.
And Kevin, it was so long, I wasn't worried about the things I did or if the shark worked. And what I realized was so good was Spielberg's directing of the 3 guys.
Yeah.
It was 3 guys of different personalities. Mm-hmm. The old fisherman and the ichthyologist smartass, and the cop that didn't want to be there.
Right.
and then there's the shark.
Yes.
But that relationship really made the movie, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Number one, it is you spend more time with people than you do with the shark. The shark is what gets you in. That's the sexy. Like, what? It's a movie about a shark that eats people? Then you get inside and find out it's a movie about three men thrown together in the midst of this high adventure on the seas. Their interrelativity, like, of course, them having the conversation about the USS Indianapolis.
Oh, yeah, it was great stuff.
That's definitely like the meat of that movie. But what gets everybody through the door is the shark. And if the shark doesn't work, you can't go on that adventure, man. You guys made a shark that worked. And so much so that, like, no one will ever have to do what you guys did again. They'll always do it on a laptop or some such shit.
Yeah, it's so changed. It's it was like I had an award show. They gave me the art directors gave me a lifetime achievement.
Yeah, it was just recently, right? It was in February. You got
and what was a big surprise is they got Steven to do a video, and it was so complimentary. And it was just the relationship all these years, and then he was saying he still has never been on a set as big as the one we did in Close Encounters, and he still, the relationship we had on Jaws, and so that was so rewarding, Kevin, after all these years, to have a man of his stature who just keeps making movies to not forget. You know what I mean?
What? That's very true, and it's sweet of him and says a lot about his character. But what matters is that you're an unforgettable person who did unforgettable work, and one could easily argue that Steven doesn't get to have the career he gets unless he meets you along the way. You're a key component, my friend.
Well, yeah, it works both ways.
It does. It does. I'm 49. I'm going to be 50 in a couple months, and I've been watching this movie. As we know, it's been out for 45 years. I saw it in a drive-in with my parents the summer that it came out.
Amazing. Still
Stays with me. It's still probably my all-time favorite movie. And not just, of course, like it being an adventure film is captivating, particularly for a kid. When you're a kid, you're like, what? It's about a shark?
5 years old.
Say again.
I'm 5 years old. I was thinking so you saw it when you were 5.
Yeah.
When I was looking at there was something else I found interesting. Your father was born the same year I was born.
Get out of here. Really?
1936.
Yes. My God. So that's right. My dad would be 80. What
84.
Are you? 84. My dad would be 84 this year. Wow.
I was 84 Thursday. I know. I thought about that. The poor man didn't have the life that I had.
He had a wonderful life. And what he did? He took me to the movies when I was a kid.
Oh, that was great. But I mean, he obviously didn't extend.
Yeah, he got to 67. His heart took him out a little bit earlier.
That number got me. I looked at the 1936. Wait a minute, and then so that figure 70. So you're 5. So it was just interesting.
It's everything to me, this movie, and the hearing. I've always loved the behind the scenes stories, the stories of it being made. As a filmmaker, it's thrilling to hear about how close to failure everyone was until it was an utter success and whatnot. So not only the story itself, Jaws of Chief Brody, having to face a killer shark coming to Amity, captured my imagination and heart, but the stories of y'all making it and how you put everything into it and how it was incredibly visionary because these things didn't exist. Now we take for granted, like, oh, you want to make a shark movie? Let's put a shark in a movie. You couldn't do that sort of thing then. And the entire industry, the summer blockbuster industry, built on the very strong back of the spine of that shark that you first started drawing back in 1973. That is nuts, man.
Yeah, long time.
It
was thanks to Bob Matty and Roy Arbogast and people like that just worked there. Oh my God, so hard. They were the heroes.
You're not taking nearly enough credit, Joe. You're a hero as well. If you haven't seen Jaws lately, kids, 45th anniversary limited edition Blu-ray is the one to pick up. I saw cut scenes that I'd never seen before, footage that was not used in the movie. And I saw something really interesting in a behind the scenes bit that they did with Spielberg on set while they were making the movie. And he talked about how he cast people that could be very big so that he could scale them back in editing. And in some of the cut scenes that they showed on the Blu-ray, that was evident. I was like, wow, this doesn't feel like Jaws at all. Of course not. That's why they cut it out and stuff. But even the behind the scenes thing was just packed with information. If you're a Jaws lover, pick up the 45th anniversary limited edition. If you're a Jaws lover, pick up Designing Jaws, Joe Alves' book. Joe, thank you for dreaming up a world in which we all got to escape, man. Amity, as you know, means friendship. And that friendship has extended for 45 years, man. Thank you. We just finally met now, but thank you for everything that you've given me since I was 5 years old, because it worked out for me. I wound up in the movies because of this movie.
It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, Kevin. You've had quite a career.
Oh,
You've great stuff.
You're a legend, sir. Thank you for everything you've done.
Take care.
That is SModcast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kevin Smith.
Joe Alves.
Have a week.
This has been a production of Smodco Internet Radio. Sir, only at smodcast.com.